Hello everybody and welcome back to the Crooked MMA YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing Matchmaker Mondays after UFC Vegas, Tuivasa versus Martian Tybura. We didn't get the results we wanted, but we still have to be the little matchmaker here, you know what I'm saying? So going over the fights, we're not going to mess about here. Going over the fights, Martian Tybura gets a round 1 sub against Tuivasa. Don't want to talk about it any more than that, honestly. Good job to Martian. Good job. I'm going to match him up. And I know I matched this guy up in my last Matchmaker Mondays video, which was last week. I matched him up against Sergey Spivak. But I'm going to say this is the fight to make. You know, you got Jailton Almeida coming off a loss. What's his name? Martian Tybura coming off a win. I think this is a matchup to make because it just makes sense. Realistically, they're only like a rank apart, 2 ranks apart. They're not that far apart. Give Martian a little bit of a boost up. Give Jailton, he has to fight back after that loss. I think that's a good matchup to make. I think Jailton Almeida would win it, but you never know after he's been a little bit exposed after his last fight. But that's the matchup I would make. I think it's a good fight. Not that exciting, but it'd go good on like a pay-per-view, maybe pay-per-view prelims on a stacked pay-per-view or on a boring pay-per-view like we've been getting maybe on the main card somewhere. I think that's the way to go. Next up, I'm just taking off my socks. Next up, Tuivasa. I reckon match him up against Rosenstrike. He's coming off a first round submission loss after 3 other losses. So he's on 4 losses. 2 KO losses to start, 2 2 submission losses to end it. Book him this fight, he might end up on another KO loss, but at least it gives him a chance. I actually like this matchup for Ty because it's going to be on the feet. Rosenstrike looked good in his last matchup, but he looked like he could be hit by big shots. I think this is a fair matchup. Gives Rosenstrike a chance to go up the rankings coming off a win. Gives Ty a chance to get another win. But it's still a hard matchup. It's not a layup by any means. I think this is the fight to make. You're not going to see any grappling out of either man. It's going to be a stand and bang fight, and that's what the fans want to see. And they're only like, Rosenstrike's like a rank above him, or maybe even a rank below him. No, he's below him. He's like 2 ranks below him, 1 rank below him. I think it makes sense in the rankings. Next up, who we got? Bryan Battle. Got a draw against Ange Looser. Bullshit. I think it's bullshit. I think Ange Looser was looking for a way out. I agree with why Bryan Battle was angry. I think match Bryan Battle up against Phil Rowe. It's a little bit of a jump up in the rankings, but I look at it this way, and you'll understand more what I mean when I match Ange Looser up. It's like Bryan Battle was winning that fight. And on the chance that Ange Looser was looking for a way out, I think this is the best way to go. Reward Bryan Battle a little bit. Like, obviously, you're not going to give him a ranked fight, but reward him a little bit. Phil Rowe would be further up the rankings. He's been in the game for a while. He got a shot at the rankings against Neil Magny and lost. I think match him up against Bryan Battle and get Bryan Battle a chance to get further up the rankings. I don't think Ange Looser deserves the chance at a rematch. Book Bryan Battle versus Phil Rowe. It's an interesting fight too. Phil Rowe's got nice, good boxing. Bryan Battle, it's going to be a bit of a test for him. You know, what he was showing is he would have run over Ange Looser if the fight kept going. So you might as well book him against somebody who's a bit higher level and see how he goes there. Ange Looser, the guy who arguably quit. He quit, but I'll say arguably quit. I think match him up against Denny Barlow. You know, I think he's had 1 fight in the UFC, maybe 2 fights. Nice fighter, clean fighter, nice boxing. I think he's coming off a KO win or a real good performance. I should have got it up on my screen of like exactly where these fighters are, but I remember his last performance being really... he was first and I can't remember his name, but he's sort of like Japanese type of guy. I can't remember his name, but he looked really good in it. Sort of dominated that fight, but he did show some weakness. So I think this is a fair fight for Ange Looser to maybe expose a younger, fresher Denny Barlow, or maybe get exposed himself by Denny Barlow, and Denny Barlow can get up the rankings. Don't rematch Ange Looser versus Bryan Battle, in my opinion. It's not worth it. Next up, Oven St. Preux, coming off a win. Now, Oven St. Preux is just outside the rankings, I believe. Like, he'd be like 20, maybe 21, maybe even closer than that. So I'm saying book him against Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz is that his name? Dominic Reyes, sorry. Fucking hell. Oven St. Preux, Dominic Cruz. I think this is a good fight. Dominic Cruz gets a chance to actually get a win. But Oven St. Preux looked pretty good. I reckon he could give Dominic Reyes a good test. And the thing is, I've heard MMA gurus saying this. They have to pay Oven St. Preux a lot of money. You might as well get the most out of him and put him in these big matchups. Give him a chance back at the rankings, although he's 40. Probably not the smartest idea. But I think this is a fun matchup because best case, Dominic Reyes wins. He finally gets a win. He's back on track. Oven St. Preux wins. Probably not best case scenario, but you're paying him a lot of money. Might as well put him in a bigger matchup. Especially coming off a win, you might as well put him in a good matchup. So that's the fight to make. Kennedy as well was just outside the rankings. Like, I think he was ranked at one point. So this fight makes sense, in my opinion. Moving on to Kennedy. His career hasn't been looking the best lately. How do you win against Carlos Olberg and then lose a few fights later to Oven St. Preux is beyond me, but he looks shit. I think book him up against Bogdan Gaskarian or whatever, Boston Gazkov or something. What's his name? Something like that. You know what I'm talking about. He's coming off a win against, I'm actually going to pull this up so I actually at least seem like I know what I'm talking about. Bogdan Gaskov. Let's see. Just give me 1 minute. Boston Gaskov, UFC. So, Boston Gaskov, 31 years old. You know, you got to make the most out of him quick if you're going to make anything out of him. He's coming off a win to Zach Pauga before that. His debut fight coming in short notice to Volkan Ozdemir. But he did KO Zach Pauga in the first round. Give him a boost up against Kennedy and Zexchu and see how that fight goes. That's an interesting fight. Kennedy's chin ain't the best and Bogdan would be the one to catch it. I think Kennedy's got to prove himself here against an up-and-comer such as Boston Gaskov. His name's actually Bogdan Gaskov. My mistake. Next up, Christian Rodriguez. I think book him against Charles Jourdain. I think that's the fight to make. Charles Jourdain, big name. Christian Rodriguez coming off a robbery, arguably. A robbery, let's just call it a robbery. Arguably. I can see why they scored it towards him, but the way they score fights, I think it should have been Isaac Dolgarian's win, in all honesty. But I think it's a good fight. Big name in Charles Jourdain. One of the biggest unranked fighters in the UFC. Like, I think semi-casuals know who Charles Jourdain is just because he's been on so many fights. He's so much talked about. He's like a mini superstar, really, outside the rankings. Although he loses, he's a pretty big name. I think book him against Christian Rodriguez. Give Christian Rodriguez a chance up the rankings. And try and prove himself against somebody such as Charles Jourdain. I think that's the matchup to make. Next up, Isaac Dolgarian, Book him against Jenkins. I actually forget his first name. Jenkins, UFC. Let's see. Jack Jenkins. Aussie. I knew it was something like that. But book him against Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins coming off a brutal loss. I think he broke his arm or something crazy like that. But he was looking good before that. Against Pedro Pascal or something like that. Not Pedro Pascal. You know what I'm talking about. Pascal, I think is his last name. Book him against Isaac Dolgarian. Jack Jenkins, Isaac Dolgarian. It's an interesting matchup and it's a fun matchup because people know Isaac Dolgarian is. Jack Jenkins needs a win and he should do it against a dangerous opponent to prove that he's still got it after that injury. I think this is a perfect matchup. They'll be on similar timelines too. Isaac Dolgarian didn't get too injured in that fight. Jack Jenkins would just be recovering from his arm injury, likely looking to come back soon. I think book this fight for about 3 months from now, something like that. Book it. I want to see it. Maybe on the Perth card later this year. Be interesting to see. Next up, Gerald Meerschaert, the GOAT. The GOAT. He got I think it was a round 1 sub, round 2 sub. I can't fully remember. I am saying, book him against Armen Petrosyan. This is an interesting matchup, one I want to see. Petrosyan's shown that he can be taken down, can be exploited on the ground, especially in his last matchup. Gerald Meerschaert's shown that he can be tagged on the feet. That's his biggest weakness. Even in this fight, I reckon he looked slow. He got hit by big shots. This is a fun matchup. You sort of don't know how it's going to go. I would lean Armin Petrosian, although Jared Meerschaert's the GOAT. I would lean Armin Petrosian, but if Jared Meerschaert gets him to the ground, it could be wraps. I think Armin Petrosian needs to prove that side of his game, and Jared Meerschaert needs to prove that he can beat another good contender, like good outside the ranking contender, and then with another win, I know they're not going to do it, but I'd say give Jared Meerschaert a shot at the rankings, mate. Do it. Next we got Brian Barberena. I say Bookymans, Panahelo Soriano. I'm pretty sure that's his name. I probably butchered it. But Soriano, I think that's a good fight to make. Soriano, career has been rocky as fuck. Like, let's look over his career. Soriano, UFC. Like, he's coming off a loss to Dustin Stoltzfus. Before that, lost to Roman Kopylov. Win before that against Dalcha Lumbula. Lost before that to Nick Maximov. A loss before that to Brendan Allen. I say book this fight because it's an interesting fight. Two hard strikers on the feet. One of them's going to get knocked out. Brian Barberena with his sloppy sort of smothering boxing style. Poliano with his striking can be a little slow at times. I think that's the fight to make. It'll be an interesting fight. One of them will snap their losing streak. And I reckon the loser gets cut. I reckon that's fair. Loser gets cut in this matchup. High stakes. That is the fight to make. And lastly, we got Mike Davis. I'm saying book Mike Davis against Rafa Garcia. I think that's the fight to make. Mike Davis, looking good. Time to give him a shot up the unranked rankings. I think Rafa Garcia, he'd be up there. He'd be like 25, maybe 26, something around that range. I think book him against Mike Davis. Give Mike Davis a bit of a jump up in talent too, against a proven Rafa Garcia. You know he's not amazing, but he's the type of guy with a few improvements who could break into the middleweight rankings. Book him against Mike Davis, lightweight rankings, sorry. Book him against Mike Davis. I think that's the fight to make. Interesting fight. Rafa Garcia's pressure might give Mike Davis some issues, but I think Mike Davis would get it done. But I think it's a fun matchup to make, and that is what I would make for this Matchmaker Mondays. Let me know what matchups you agree with. Let me know which ones you disagree with. And as always, guys, take care. Please subscribe. We're like 4 away from 100 subs. Would really appreciate it. And as always, guys, have a good one.
Give me 5 minutes, I'ma pull up with like 5 niggas. Give me 5 minutes, girl, I'ma be right with you. If you vibe it right.